Good morning, everyone, and welcome to University of Wollongong in Dubai's third Women in Educational Leadership Summit 2021. It is, of course, organized by the university's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. My name is Zinat Reza Khan. I'm an assistant professor at the Faculty of Engineering and Information Sciences, a member of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and one of the founders of WELS. At UOWD, we strongly believe in creating a work environment that is dipped in our values of integrity, passion, courage, collaboration, innovation, and excellence. A part of this commitment is to ensure safe and healthy working conditions, career paths, and opportunities that recognize and celebrate our diversity and provides for equity and inclusion at every step for everyone. Today, we are ecstatic to bring back this platform featuring some dynamic women leaders from our University of Wollongong Global Enterprises, UOWD family, and from the school sector in the UAE in two exciting panels. Before we go ahead, just a quick reminder, everyone, that the session is being recorded and there will be some screenshots taken for promotional purposes. So I'm just going to quickly check to see if Professor Salim has joined us yet. Perfect. So, of course, without further ado, I would like to now invite the President of UOWD and Chair of the committee, Professor Mohammed Salim, to say a few words.
Good morning. Morning, Zinat. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, sir. Yes, we can hear you.
Good morning. Morning. Sorry, because I wasn't, the WebEx was showing I'm not in control of the mic, so I wasn't sure if. Good morning, colleagues. I'm really pleased to welcome you today to the Women's Educational Leadership Summit. I've witnessed the first iterations of this conference here on campus, and it's sad that we can't do it physically, but we're doing it now with technology. This is a great opportunity to highlight really common norms and challenges faced by women leaders in education. Let's take this opportunity to celebrate and acknowledge these achievements and success stories from around the region. As Zinat has mentioned, UOWD, all along with the University of Wollongong Global Enterprises, gender equality in our environment, in our value, gender equality is and was always an important organizational value. Actually, the global enterprise in Australia has been for many years the best employer for women, known for that. And this ensure our diversity and equity is practiced on a daily basis and for the personal, in our personal life. Today is a very exceptional day. It coincides with the Women International Day, International Women Day. We celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievement of women all over the world. It's a very important day to acknowledge and raise awareness towards women's rights, gender equality, and parity. It is also an occasion to come together to share and celebrate the achievement that we all have been able to achieve. I like the theme of this International Day, which is choose to challenge. A challenge word is an alert word, and from challenge definitely comes change and come achievement. So let's all choose to challenge. And I don't know if you've seen the slogan, but we raise the hand. Can I ask everyone to raise the hand and challenge? We want to challenge anything which is around inequality and discrimination, stereotypes, and all sorts of bias. It's really my pleasure on behalf of UOWD to welcome the colleagues from the school sector, our colleagues from Australia, and from the university to this exciting day. Thank you very much, Zinat and the team, for organizing this. Welcome to UOWD.
Thank you so much, Professor Salim, for those inspiring words. As always, it's you know, we need both men and women to recognize that you know, everybody is equal and everybody needs the same kind of platform to be able to pursue their passion. This year, of course, as Professor Salam has said, the theme for the International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. And I'm delighted to now introduce to you our first panel of the day, women leaders in our space, who have chosen to challenge norms, stereotypes, and hurdles in their careers to be where they are today. These are our very own women leaders and their inspirational stories of success. So our first panelist is none other than UOWD Global Enterprise Group CEO and Managing Director, Marisa Mastriani. Brains behind the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the entire network, Marisa is an experienced CEO and non-executive director with expertise in strategic and operational planning, mergers and acquisitions, financial and risk management, corporate governance, and change management. I do not believe Marisa needs much introduction. Welcome, Marisa. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thanks,
Next, we have Dr. May El-Baraji, who is the Associate Dean of Research and winner of UOWD Research Award. A strong supporter of women in education, Dr. May has a keen research interest in next-generation networking and currently involved in several research collaborations with international universities in Canada, UK, Lebanon, and local industry partners in areas varying from cybersecurity to cloud computing and network function virtualization to e-healthcare and smart cities. Dr. May, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you today morning.
Thank you, Dr. Zinat, and everyone.
We have with us this morning Julie Stewart. Julie is the Executive Director for People and Culture for UOWD Global Enterprises. She's a specialist in talent management and has extensive experience in organizational change management, leadership, development, culture, and driving HR projects in major commercial businesses. Good morning, good evening, Julie, and welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Dr. Zenith, and good morning to everyone in Dubai.
Our final speaker this morning is Joyce Priya, who is the Manager of Institutional Effectiveness Department at UOWD. Joyce is a dynamic member of UOWD's leadership team with extensive experience in leading accreditations, quality assurance, academic affairs matters, graduate student academic performances, developing and managing policies, and so much more. Welcome, Joyce, to the panel today morning.
Thank you.
So with the introductions done, we will now dive into our main topic, which is Choose to Challenge. So I will start with our very first question to Marisa. We want to know a little bit about your journey in this education industry.
Thank you, Dr. Zenith, and may I say thank you for the invitation today. I was very honoured to be asked, and I'm just a bit disappointed that I can't be there in person. It feels like I haven't visited my wonderful colleagues in Dubai for forever, but it has. I was there virtually 12 months ago. I was there in January, February last year, but so much has happened and so much has passed. So, and thank you, Professor Salam, as well, for hosting this event on campus. Yes. So my journey, I actually haven't been in the education sector my entire career. I've actually worked in the service industry, but I've worked in three different sectors during my career. The first was the maritime industry. The second was health and aged care, and then the third was education. I think the common theme was in all of those was that I started off as a commerce accounting intern trainee, and so I pursued a career path that saw me progress in the accounting finance positions until I got to be in managerial roles and then CEO roles. So I joined the then ITC. Some of you have been around long enough to know that UOWD Global Enterprises was known as ITC, and I actually joined then as CFO, even though I'd left a job as CEO because I wanted to work closer to home. I wasn't thinking that I'd end up spending more time away and overseas at the time when I took it. And then I became CEO in 2012. But principally, I bring to the education sector my experience in accounting, finance, and as you read out, Zenith, mergers and acquisitions, and that's helped us in our growth strategy to bring UOW education to the world. So that gives you a little bit of background about my entry into education. But I have to say one thing: everywhere I've worked, I've been quite I felt that what they did was worthwhile, and there was some purpose behind it. But I think that both in health and aged care, I really felt there was passion and purpose. And I have to say that working in the education sector is probably one of the most fulfilling sectors you can work in. So I'm very proud that I'm part of this organisation and also working in this sector.
Wow, what a diverse experience. This is really going to help us when we come back and ask you some more about the education industry itself. So before we do that, jumping on to Dr. May, if you could just tell us quickly about your journey in the education industry.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dr. Zina. So I think my journey started very early on. I started my education in the engineering field when there were very few females actually sitting in the classroom, probably around 10%. But I always had a passion for math and science, and I thought, why can't I do it? Let me try and excel and do what I love. So I went in and I graduated top of my class, and the next day of graduation, I was already in the classroom teaching. So you can imagine. And I remember that day that I'm standing at the board and the students are saying, hey, sit down, the instructor is coming now, don't stand there. I said, no, the instructor is already here. So it was pretty interesting to teach students almost my age. And this is where it all started. Afterwards, I continued pursued my postgraduate education, did my master and PhD in computer science. And the good thing is I did my postgraduate in the industry, actually, in a collaboration program between industry and academia. So I got the taste a bit of the industry world and how it works. And I knew right there and then that, I want to be in academia because I think that education and teaching for me is not just about knowledge sharing, it's more of a platform for inspiring others, expanding their mind, and helping them pursue their dreams and become whatever they want to be. So this is really what draws me to this industry. And then from there I just started my career as assistant professor, associate, and here we are today.
Oh, wow, what a journey. I think, especially in engineering, you've captured the essence really well about women, us women in engineering. They say we are really rare in there. Okay, moving on to Julie. Could you just share with us your journey in the education industry?
Thank you, Dr. Zina. So as you mentioned before, my career mainly started in the technology sector. So I spent a long time in there really looking at the talent and performance of females in a highly, about a 90% male business at the time. So really growing young graduates through to leadership careers and architectural careers. So that's where I started off in terms of growing people, but then came to the education sector in this role in UOWD Global Enterprises 4 years ago. And have found it also very satisfying. And I come from a teaching family. So my father was a secondary maths teacher and so passionate about students. And we still talk all the time about his career. And in fact, some of his friends that he taught with are actually now teachers at our college at UOW College Australia. And so now I run into them on campus and see that they used to work with my father in maths and work around the various secondary schools and now work at our college. So it's always been sort of part of my family and part of my history. So I really enjoy now that combination of growing female leaders across the business as well, but also encouraging my children as well, to my girls, to really look at those STEM subjects as well. And my father is currently doing tuition with my 14-year-old daughter with her maths. And even though he's 83, he still remembers it all.
Oh, fantastic. You've got education in your blood.
Yeah.
So we move on to our last speaker, Joyce. If you could just share your experience with us, and it's been quite long, especially with UOWD.
It's been quite long, and I would say that majority of my career has been in the education sector. Prior to joining Wollongong, I did work interned actually for Unilever and then the Nike brand for around 2 years in both the companies. Surprisingly, I was initially interviewed for a teaching assistant position in Wollongong, but then I got a call saying, look, we need someone to handle the admin side because we are setting up the new College of IT. So that was the time when the colleges were set up, the College of IT, Postgraduate and Business, and they said, okay, we need someone for that. And I'm like, yep, wherever you need me, I'm there. And we set up the College of IT, and a number of you know Navar, and he's been a very great mentor to me in, teaching me everything that I know. I basically shaped the role in that unit. I just didn't stick to the basic admin roles. It's more about volunteering for projects, trying to find anywhere and anything that I can contribute to. And, I started my accreditation. The time I joined, we were in the middle of accreditation. And Zenith, if you remember, we both had spent the whole night in the university trying to do documentation. So I really did start off with something small as creating files, photocopying documents. And, after such a long time, I've reached where I am. And it's due to the support that I've received from a number of people along the way as well.
Awesome. I mean, such a diverse panel of speakers. It's going to be really exciting to hear the kind of challenges you guys have faced. So diving back into that, Marissa, I'll come back to you particularly because you've actually been in 3 different industries. You can really tell us what is this one key challenge that you really saw maybe that was common and then you chose to challenge it, like any kind of stereotype or bias or a norm that was expected at the workplace. 1 second. We need to unmute. Just 1 second. Yeah.
Zenith. And it's interesting, because as I've been reflecting on what you might ask me and what's changed, because, there's so many things now that you wouldn't even think an issue. Well, they're not, right? They're not. But at the time, they were challenges to be overcome. There were biases that were simply in the workplace that, as a female, we just, I think, sometimes accepted. It didn't happen to me. My sister's actually 7 years older than me. And when she joined, she was working for the public service. And the rule was that when you got pregnant, you had to leave.
Wow.
So, that was the rule in Australia. So, because, you weren't allowed to be a mother and work, so once you had a child, there are things that, that I didn't have to overcome. By the time I got to the workforce, that wasn't my challenge. So they keep on, we keep on facing new challenges is I think what I'm trying to say. And that's what the importance of today is, that the job is not done because there continues to be so many hurdles for us that we face. And I tell this story that the only reason I got my first job as a trainee it was called back then the Maritime Services Board, is because there'd been a new government legislation brought in. It was called Equal Employment Opportunity, and it said that if you were employing, so many staff, you need to have a balance. Women were to be given an opportunity, and at that time they were employing 3 trainees. So one of them had to be a woman. So that's why. See what I mean? You might think that these things are, what you see now is just a given, that women, that girls, that university graduates have the same opportunities in employment. But they didn't. And that's why when we talk about, when we have these, we have in place policies that make sure that we have, when we do interviews, that we have, representation of male and female in the final pool that we're interviewing. Because if you're not proactive at that, you can actually find yourself in a situation where you've got some unconscious bias that comes in. But I think the other is that, I'm an accountant, right? So I'm a CPA by background. So a lot of the challenges, the stereotyping there, and I swear you not, I have walked into a conference when I was a very young accountant, and I was the only woman that walked in. Now, you're not thinking that I must not that old, right? But that isn't that long ago where perhaps, there wasn't as many. Or the other is they were there, but they weren't given the opportunity to attend a conference. That's a privilege perhaps that was given to fewer women than, and I was fortunate enough at the time to go. So, I could sit here, I could actually spend and take over the whole day and say to you how along the way there've been challenges that I think that I only see now as I look back. But looking forward, I know that as a society, we've changed, embraced gender equality, and I think that we're richer for it. We're richer for it.
Yeah.
So, thank
And
you.
I think it's so significant what you said, that, it's always changing, but it's always still, there is some level of some kind of bias or stereotype that the newer generations are facing. And then, so for them to think back to what you've gone through or we've gone through will be like, no, that's just not acceptable. Of course, that's just not acceptable.
Yes. So I think it's all degrees, Dr. Zenith. It's all degrees. When I was talking about it, was just about getting a job, getting the training. Starting at the bottom was the challenge.
Right.
So I think as a society and as a world, as employers, and we've thought about this, and we've created a more egalitarian way of how we recruit and how we promote. I think you keep on looking, and I'm going to say I saw a statistic that in terms of, and I was just having a look at it, and I can't see where I've put it, but we're talking about the education sector. The percentage of women that are deans in universities is minuscule, right?
Yes.
It's absolutely minuscule. The percentage of women who are professor level is at 28% compared to male. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. We've got plenty of women coming in, in lecturer roles. I think, it's 50%. We actually have more women in, and I'm talking about Australian statistics here, by the way. I couldn't get my hands on. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is that we're making steps, but there's still a long way to go.
So do you get, in your position as group CEO, when you want to bring in some kind of rules or policies on, equal opportunity, do you feel a pushback even now?
I think I'm in a very privileged position in that myself, the executive team, Professor Mohammed Salim, we are all part of the executive, which we make decisions in the best interests. I think the thing that we need to be challenged on is that we actually go looking for where the problems are, because if you don't look, you won't see them.
Right.
That we actually we look at, like, I know and the work that the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee is doing is fabulous. So congratulations. You're very lucky, Dubai, to have such an active committee, because each committee in each country is a little bit different, and they're focusing on different things, because as a culture, as a society, you are at different levels. But I think, when we did the pay equity review, you really got to dig into the data, right? You got to look at where there's some biases, what's happening, where we're not treating people the same. You can start with male and female, but it's actually even a lot more broader than that. So my responsibility. So the pushback isn't, I think it's to be consciously front of mind. So for me, it's one of our strategic priorities. It's one of the things I hold myself accountable. I hold the executive accountable. And that's why all of our country heads, like the president in Dubai, they chair the committee in their own country, because we make it a priority. If you give it to someone else, what's that saying? It's not, you've got more important things to do. I don't. This is one of the most important, because it's looking after our people.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we will move on to Dr. May. Dr. May, you've already given us a little bit of glimpse of the kind of challenges you faced. Young, few in your field, like I said, rare in engineering. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced as you went through your career ladder?
Yeah, I think maybe the challenges that I faced were more coming from other people's perceptions and stereotypes rather than my own. I think I was really lucky to be raised with a very strong female role model. My mom was very strong, independent, active woman, family of 8, only girl and 7 boys. So she kind of got raised with the spirit of, I can do anything that you guys can do. And she translated this to myself and my brother. And I remember I never growing up had any impression or thought that, you know, my brother can do more things than me. On the contrary, she always instilled that you can do anything that you put your mind into and you can excel in it if you dedicate yourself to it. So internally, I didn't have any barriers at all. But when I went into the workplace, no, I saw these stereotypes and biases a lot, mainly in the sense of people looking at myself or other females and saying, hey, you're in a technical field, you're in the tech or education industry, and you know, you're not supposed to be in there somehow. This is not a field that women go to or should go to. And so I think, of course, that translates into probably less opportunities. Your voice is not heard all the time and things like that. But I think to a certain degree, the way I dealt with that is to focus on myself, what I can achieve, what results I can bring to the table, and what impact I can make, rather than letting all of this distract me from my objective, is to succeed, you know, and do something good for the organization that I work in. So yeah, and maybe just adding a bit again about women in the engineering or tech space. I see in the classrooms the number of girls increasing a bit. So probably we have around 25 to 30%, which is very encouraging, at least in the region. What we still don't see, which Marisa touched upon, there is a gap, but it's closing slowly, you know. So there is a gender gap, but there is also a bigger gender leadership gap. Number of women reaching leadership position to the top is very little still. I remember Jai sending me an article about dean that was, chosen in University of Pennsylvania, the first in 139 years. So I'm like, this is like 139 years, only one female dean, you know, University of Pennsylvania. This is too long, I think, for having non-diversity. So yeah, that's all from now for now.
You mentioned at one point that because of the stereotypes that you saw, they may have led to less career opportunities. But of course, mashallah, you are where you are today. So how did you manage to challenge those stereotypes?
Perseverance, working hard, focusing on your goal and target and not getting distracted by these things. And just being creative and creating your own opportunities. If someone doesn't give you the opportunities you're looking for, create whatever you can create and bring something new. And I think just showing your value by the result and impact of your work. That's what has worked for me so far.
Bravo on that. Moving on to Julie. So you have, of course, been in the field of growing people, right? And particularly female leaders. What kind of stereotypes or challenges have you come across?
I was going to talk first of all about sort of a little bit different to Dr. May and her experience in her childhood and growing up. I think I put a challenge on myself where I had just one brother. He was 2 years older than me. He was good in every single subject, and he was dux of both high school and University of Wollongong. He's an engineer, and he was the dux of his computer engineering at UOWD. And I think for a long time, being 2 years younger and not being in the same subjects, and put a lot of pressure on myself that I wasn't good enough. It didn't come from my family, but it came from myself, and it's something I had to work on over time. Pleased to say it's not an issue anymore. But it was a lot of pressure I put on myself. And then as I've grown up, I think for me, in terms of facing challenges and growing female leaders, my first executive role about 15 years ago, leadership role, I was the only female for a long time. And it was very typical where, you know, the HR director was female, but in the technology industry, all of the other executives were male. And one of the challenges I had in terms of growing the leaders and really being able to bring other women up through the business and through to the leadership team was we had quite a few older gentlemen who had an older way of working. And I had to really be brave and speak up to them about their behavior and sometimes the things that they used to say. But I found over time as well that they did respect me for that. And over the time, the culture did change because I knew that I was paving the way within that leadership team to bring more women in. And if I didn't speak up first, then the behavior would never, ever change. And glad to look back at that now, and every executive team I've been in since has always had a great balance. And, you know, we're extremely lucky at Global Enterprises where we have a wonderful balance of female and male leaders, and it just brings so much more diversity and diversity of thought to the table. So I feel really lucky.
So just going back to what you said about your childhood and yourself, of course, we are our biggest critics always, right? But besides your own, bars that you set for yourself, did you face any other pushback around the workspaces that you've been in? Or because definitely, I'm guessing not from the family so much, but maybe in the organizations that you worked at?
Yes, I think a little bit actually working over in Asia and especially in Japan, and being taken seriously in the early part of sort of around mid sort of 2005, and I started 2006 and starting to work in Japan, and I found it particularly difficult to gain respect and have my voice heard as a female leader within the business, because again, I was moving in, it was a technology business and there were no females within that business. So it took a lot of time to develop within the Japanese culture, which at the time, I'm not sure what it's like now, but particularly did not see women at the same level as men when it came to sitting at the leadership table.
Wow. Quite a challenge. I must say, I think in this respect, I've been very lucky. And I think Joyce voiced that a little. We've been lucky because we were at UOWD, which has been always very focused on giving equal opportunities to everybody. So with that, I come to, of course, Joyce, with your career in UOWD, and then you've done some work outside of UOWD as well. Yep. Any kind of stereotype of norms that you've really had to challenge?
Yeah, my background is sort of similar to me, and Julie, I can really relate to what you're saying as well. I had a very strong family support. My mom has been my biggest support. She always believed that, you know, I can do anything that I set my mind to, and she always, you know, sort of encouraged me and pushed me to reach my, you know, potential. And like Julie, I have a brother who's highly more successful, who's much more smarter than me. We have a 6-year age gap. And, you know, he's always been good at what he does. I mean, football captain, debate club captain, university gold medalist. So he's, you know, first position everywhere. And I always felt myself less smarter. I couldn't, you know, even imagine to reach the heights that he had, but then I always made up for it by hard work. And this is what my mom always told me. She said, it's not enough to be smart. It's the hard work that goes into reaching your success. And I think from a very young age, it's been hard work. I used to have to spend a lot more time in studying than my brother did. But, you know, it all reached. And if I'm going to start about the journey and the stereotyping, I have to also talk about, you know, the stereotypes that I faced in other companies, as well as the education sector as well. So in one of the organizations that I had worked for, it's, you know, it has been very difficult because when I started my career in my early 20s, the comments that I used to get is, you're too young, you don't look old enough, how are we going to, you know, get people to listen to you? So I had a very tough time being heard because apparently I was young and I may not know what I'm talking about. So it, you know, even though I had proved myself that I did have the knowledge, I was talking based on facts, it was still very difficult to be heard. in the education sector, in one of the institutions that I worked for, the overall organization had a very good gender balance. I think, they always try to maintain it to at least 40% female, if not 50%. But the problem was all the 40%, most of the 40% of the female population were in entry admin roles or, secretarial roles. And I worked with the academics. I was more in an academic environment where we had around, let's say, less than 10% females. And I worked in a predominantly male setting over there. One best example I can probably give you was I was the only woman in the education committee in that particular institution. And except for there was another female who, of course, took the minutes. We don't have the guys taking the minutes in that organization. And the first time I spoke in the education committee, it was pin drop silence. I could just see heads raised, and I'm like, what did I say wrong? And my boss at that time, who was chairing the education committee, just, had that look, a very puzzled look, and then he carried on. And later on, I found out that the lady who was there before me never spoke, and we were not expected to speak. So the first time they had heard me speak, some of them one or two were offended, apparently, and some of them, came back and said, good on you. We need someone who talks. We need someone who raises the issues that you have raised. It took a while. It took 2-3 other committees, but then my boss started asking me, Joyce, what do you think? Joyce, are you okay with this? And I was doing accreditation in that institution as well. And the thing that I had a lot to do was I had to really prove myself over there. I had proved myself in Wollongong, but it was starting from scratch and having to prove myself, having to get all the men to listen to me, because not only was I a female in a predominantly male environment, I was someone without a PhD. Hence, I do not have the same level of smartness, brains, or knowledge that they did. So it took one visit from the CAA. It took one, of me sitting with them, going through everything before I got a stamp of approval from them. I still remember it was it's a purely engineering background, so how it is. And it was from the computer engineering or the microsystems, to be more specific. I had one guy who used to oppose everything I said. Everything, nope, nope, nope. And the department head in one meeting started agreeing with me on many things. So it was a very slow pull. And once I got the approval from some of the key members, it really made my job easier, but it took me 1.5 years to gain that approval.
Wow.
I had to push extra hard. Even in the start of my career, if I said something, people would take it with a grain of salt. But if the same thing was repeated by someone else, it was like, yes, it's a wonderful idea. Yes, you're right. We need to go about it. For a long time in my career, especially when I started off, I started off my career in Wollongong as an admin assistant, and then it became a faculty coordinator. Then I became an academic advisor. And then I got into that specialized role of accreditation, and then finally a manager. The way that I got the things done, you wouldn't believe it, is I would talk to my mentor. I would raise the issues with him, which he then had to take it to people. If I pushed, it was like, you're a troublemaker. The names that I have been called over the years, and, they think they are being, it was said in such a way that it was supposed to be meant as a joke, a private joke between us, but it's always been troublemaker. And at one point, the challenges, the challenges I faced, unfortunately, a lot of my challenges have been women themselves. Some of the obstacles that I faced have been women, it's come from women. So it's been quite a tough time. With, sometimes with women being more, your worst enemies. It's either, I remember when I was pregnant and, we delivered on a number of new program proposals, and I've completed a project. I went on maternity leave. I came back. The promotion had gone to a single female. Wow. She had actually said, she had a baby. She won't be able to give you the same attention to work. You won't be able to get the best out of her. I'm available. Give me the job. And I questioned saying, how come I was not given a chance? And, I have this way of catching people off guard because I'm not afraid to speak. I'm not afraid to ask the questions. And the truth came out saying, oh, but you just had a baby and she said she can do the job. And, I wasn't even given the opportunity. And another example I can also give was I lost on a project. I had actually asked not to take on a project, but to help contribute to a project. But one of my bosses at that time said, look, you earned the recognition. So this female colleague of yours has specifically asked for you not to work on that project. I'm like, why? Wow. I mean, I'm just contributing. I don't want to take over the project. She can lead. I feel I can contribute. He's like, no, she's been crying. She's been whining. So you'll need to sit out of this project. So women have, done that. And I have also faced a bit of verbal harassment in the workplace. And unfortunately, even the women who have witnessed it were not ready to stand by my side when I had to report it. Even when I reported it to HR, I was told, he must have been joking. Wow. He said, I repeated the exact words that the person said and said, you tell me in which context can this be ever a joke? Mm. So, I mean, these are all the, so, and sometimes, the thing is you're not girly enough. You're too tough, I had to grow a tough skin quite early on. I mean, in the beginning, when I was doing my undergrad, for example, it was in microbiology, and we were all dreaming of getting into the area of biotechnology. Again, I did it in India, predominantly male. The final semester of our degree, the professor spent a lot of time advising the boys on the entrance exams, what they need to know, what sort of university to get in touch with. The girls were left in a corner. Me being who I am, oblivious to all that stereotyping, everything, went in front of the crowd. I mean, I had to go in front of the crowd. I was always the smallest or the tiniest one around, the shortest one around. So I pushed myself. I stood over there. I asked questions, which I didn't get any answers to, but I stood there, listened to whatever advice the boys were getting. And I went and I did that. And, you think your professors are your mentors and they're supposed to guide you. I got admission in one of the universities that was offering biotechnology. I went to my professor and said, look, I got admission in this university, but the fees is this much. And he literally told me, it's not worth it. Don't go for it. Because you're a woman. I didn't realize it at that time. So, I mean, it was not that we couldn't afford it, but he said, you don't waste your money on it. It's not worth it. So I initially thought it's about the university. It's not about the degree or the fee. And I ended up not going for it. And, once I got into the education sector, that's when you research into the universities and everything. I realized that university was actually a good one. And the fees was not that big of a deal compared to some of the other lesser known universities. But I was the first, in my family to embark on a totally different field because I come from a family of engineers and, people in the education sector. And I think that one of the biggest blessings that I've had is the strong support of my family. Especially my husband. My husband also comes from a background where his mom was a very strong female influence. She was a principal of a women's college. So he had that strong, his mom's, so he grew up with that mentality. He grew up with the mentality of, women being in strong leadership positions. So
just taking from some of what you have said, I want to just quickly go back because we're almost out of time as well.
Yeah.
I'll go back to Marissa first. So I'm just going to pick up some of what Joyce has said. So what kind of support have you had that has really helped you, you feel? We've heard some really crazy stories, I think, today. Some we expect to hear, some we don't expect to hear, even today. And I'm sure if we went back and actually asked our audience, we'd be hearing a lot more of these stories. But being who you are, where you were, and how you came across, from industry to industry, what kind of support do you think really helped you?
Interesting questions,
Sorry.
Zenith, in that I would say that the biggest thing that I did right was to always take risks and take opportunities that were thrown my way. So that would be probably the advice, that I would give, because, when if an organisation, and I know UOWD does, for instance, supports its staff to do further education, my challenge to all of you is, ladies, gentlemen, because it applies to all of you, what are you doing, right? That is, sometimes it's not that someone has to actually give it to you, but it's there for you to take. So I'm asking you, for some of our staff, what opportunities are you not taking hold and running with it? So I've had opportunities like that to do further studies, whether it was my master's, whether it was, professional post professional graduate studies, having an opportunity to go to Harvard. I took all of those. But someone didn't say to me, you have to. They were sort of there, and I took those. And saying yes to things that are outside your comfort zone, trying things, I think going back to there's been a couple of themes here that I've heard today. Sorry, Zenith, I'm doing a bit of your job here. But what I've heard is the role that strong women have held in everyone's lives, because I want to say mine too. The other one is the confidence to say yes, even then we're not really confident. Okay? Yeah. We have all, and we all have, I have always had doubts, when I've taken on, can I do this? I'll let you into a little secret. When I took the job here, a CFO, I hadn't actually been a CFO for 15 years. I'd been in CEO roles, but I took a backward step, and and that's okay sometimes for us to take downward moves in our careers if that's what we need for balance in our lives.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I came into this role. You'll like this, then. They did things, anyway, that's another story, but there was quite a few things that needed to be done differently, but I thought, I have no idea what I'm doing anymore. That's all right. But that's all right. I'm not going to tell anybody. I mean, I did know what I was doing. I don't think it was being done the way it should have been done when I got here. So that's why I was, a bit confused. But my point is, it's not to be put off. It's actually to view it as a challenge. And I encourage us all that have daughters and even sons in our lives, young people, that I think there's to respect diversity, to respect each other's gender, and to think that we're equal. I mean, I'm actually the mother of 2 boys, and I've been known to be called a feminist, and I say yes, and I'm proud, because it means that I think that women and men should be treated equal. And once you keep on saying that,
kind of pick up.
And both my sons have, got partners who are very strong women. So it's about appreciating that and, being good role models. So that's my answer, Zena.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that inspiration. Dr. May?
Yes.
Yeah, same question. So the kind of support you've said, you've of course had a strong family role model, but what would you say would be your advice to aspiring women? What are the things that you need to really look out for in terms of support, or like Marisa has said, look out for those risks and challenges to pick up on?
Yes, I think my advice would be, first, know yourself and your strength and build on that. Don't try to be anybody else. You're not going to succeed being anybody else. You're just going to succeed being yourself. You just need to develop your own natural skills. And I truly believe women bring a lot to the table in terms of empathy, in terms of building relationship with people around them and caring. And that's important. I mean, it's very important that organizations reflect the natural makeup of the society, not just one group of the society, because otherwise it becomes unbalanced. So know who you are and your values. Stick to those. Don't let anyone sway from those. But also, as some people mentioned here, work on yourself a lot. Develop your skills. You know, look towards the future. Have this big vision. What do I want to be? What do I want to do? What's my impact going to be, and work toward that. Another thing is probably surrounding yourself by good mentors is important. Go find yourself a good mentor, a good female mentor, or even male, you never know, who can actually guide you in your path. No one is born having answers to everything. I think it's important to kind of have this guidance and role model, and just gaining from their experience somehow.
Thank you. That's really great. Julie?
Dr. Zenith, I think for me, look, talked about the support of my family, and I faced a fair bit of criticism as a young working mother who travelled overseas. So I would quite often be travelling over to Asia when my children were still quite young. And I remember getting questioned one day by a girl that I'd grown up with and gone to school, and I still live in a fairly small community, and she questioned me, well, who is looking after your children? You know, how can you do this? And I looked at her, and she was a stay-at-home mum with 5 kids, and I thought, I really, you've chosen to do that with your life, and I respect that, and I'm not asking you any questions. But I think it was just knowing that, yes, I did travel, and yes, I did take those opportunities, and there's risk of being away from your family and being overseas, but what it brought to my family and what it now brings to my children, that they see that the career that I've had as well, that they can do anything that they want.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Joyce?
Yeah. What I would say is, as a woman, it's very difficult. I mean, women unfortunately can't have it all. We make our sacrifices. I don't mean it in a negative way. It's just that we make our sacrifices because we are constantly trying to meet the requirements of both our workplace and our family. And one thing is, you don't have to do it all alone. Many women feel that they need to balance the family. They need to do everything from cooking, cleaning, as well as take care of the house, as well as the work. And this is what I tell some people, there's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in getting someone to help clean the house, someone to help look after your child. You don't have to do everything yourself. And one of the things I've noticed, especially in the younger people, is don't be afraid to ask questions. People don't speak up. I mean, people don't speak up much now. And I always tell my team, speak up. Don't keep it in you. Speak up. Ask questions. You don't have to have that one mentor. Yes, you do. You can, you have one mentor who guides you in certain areas. You talk to some other people. So don't talk to a lot of people.
Right.
Don't be afraid of making mistakes, because this is another thing that I've seen. People are so afraid of making mistakes. You learn from your mistakes. You only have to worry if you don't learn from your mistakes. You make a mistake, and it's about admitting that what you've done was wrong and finding a way to fix it. And one thing that I have not lost over the years, and it is very difficult, is never let anyone take your confidence away. Never let any words get you down. Unfortunately, as women, we have to develop a thick skin.
Yes, I love that. And I'm actually going to end at that note. I think we could have really continued this on for more than an hour, but we just had the 45 minutes. I want to sit and keep listening to all of you guys and all your inspiring stories, but we do want to give, maybe take a couple of questions from the audience, if possible, if anybody has questions. Otherwise, I will wrap up. Feel free to just unmute your mics or let us know, raise your hands or put it in the chat. Any one of those is okay. Oh, I got a question in the chat, private. Okay, so the question is, So if we are our biggest critics, how do we get over this and still be confident, particularly if we are not sure of the job that we've been given? Oh, I think maybe I'll go back to Marissa for this first.
Thank you for that curly question, whoever wrote it. I think having conversations like we are today, that you're not alone about being, you know, your own worst critic, your own biggest critic, and the fact that women, perhaps by nature, suffer from, you know, a lack of confidence in some cases. So I think that's how I would suggest, you know, being consciously aware that this is what you're doing, I think is the step to do that. And just, you know, it's a little bit like, you know, the mantra, telling yourself this is okay, I can do this. And what have you just said? It's okay to fail. And you learn, but what have you learned from failing? What can I do better? And there isn't a need to apologise too, because I think that's the other thing that we have found, that women can be very much at fault at. Sorry, Zen, what was the second part about, and how do we
show confidence even when basically, you know, we don't know our stuff?
Oh, well, we do, yeah, well, I don't know myself, okay. Or even if, you know, look, you can take on a project, you can take something on knowing that you don't know everything you need to know, but obviously someone who's asked you knows that you know enough to work on it. And then you can do what you've heard, ask questions, ask for help, ask for support. We are a team. As an organisation, this is, you know, we are all a team and there to support. So I think that's the advice I'd give. Don't get put off by the fact that you don't know 100% of what's being asked for you. You know, have confidence that someone has confidence enough in you to ask you to do it. So I think that's the biggest hurdle that I've seen a lot happens in women, and they say that happens quite a bit. I'm sure Julie's got statistics on this, but you know, men may put up their hand and say yes, they meet all the essential criteria, when they actually have meet the criteria exactly the same as women who think that they don't have enough skills or experience. So it just is the lens that you choose to do.
Okay, I have so many questions coming through, but unfortunately we are out of time. Thank you once again to all the panelists for being here, being so candid and honest about your experiences. I think it's so crucial that we do create these safe platforms for women to come and share their experiences and for other women to hear them. Because sometimes just hearing other women's, you know, trials and tribulations is kind of like an affirmation that I'm not doing something wrong. It's not just me. And exactly what Joyce had said, that, you know, women sometimes can be women's worst enemies. And, you know, creating platforms like this creates that hopefully that environment of collegiality and support. Wonderful takeaways. Prove yourself. Be true to yourself. Make sure people are listening to you. Show courage. Don't take a step back. Take risks, and of course, try things. Don't be anybody else. Be yourself. So all such fantastic takeaways today. Thank you so much. I just wish we had more time, but we don't, and we have run out. So again, a huge thank you to the audience for being here, listening, and all the questions. My God, there's still so many questions coming through. I wish we did have time, but we don't. But thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.